Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Staggered Lunch. I worked at a business that would provide us with a 30-minute unpaid lunch break. I also live in a big city, and a 30-minute commute at 4:30 p.m. can turn into a 90-minute commute at 5 p.m. My boss was very overbearing and told us to stagger our lunch times in an email. Well, I got an idea. I clocked on my lunch break at 4:30 p.m. and immediately clocked off after that. I did this for a few days, until I got a complaint from head office that I was expected to work a full 8-hour workday. I just sent the email from my boss, where he demanded us to stagger our lunch breaks, and got HR off my back. We are a small team, and having one less person at the end of the day would mean that the remaining staff would have to work overtime to close up the shop, making them all get overtime as per the strict labor laws in my country. I didn't even get any slack from my co-workers, probably since they got overtime, and encountered a shorter commute by finishing at 5:30 p.m. Some days, my boss himself would work to avoid paying overtime. The next story is called New Fence. A few years ago, I was building a new fence for a friend of mine. I had to remove the old sections that were falling apart first, and when I got to the intersection of his back fence, his side fence, and the next door neighbor's back fence, I carefully separated the neighbor's fence from his and proceeded to carry on removing the side sections that went between their two properties. My friend had told me that the side section was 100% on his property, and that the previous owner, over 30 years ago, had deliberately given the next door neighbor's property an extra foot or so to ensure that he was building on his own property without calling for and paying for a survey. The neighbor came running outside, screaming at me that I couldn't remove the side fence, and it was their property. And just what do I think I'm doing? I responded back, very calmly, that my friend had told them well in advance that he was going to replace the fence, that he was just going to build it in the same place as the old one, and asked if they were willing to split the costs, to which they declined. Karen started screaming at me again, telling me I had no right to do that, and that my friend didn't give them proper notice, and that she didn't realize that there wouldn't be anything between their two properties to contain their dog. By now, I'm about ready to lose it, so I knocked on my friend's back door to let him know what was going on, and that he needed to talk to Karen, and that I was leaving, because I didn't want to do or say anything I would regret, or cause problems with the neighbors for my friend. The entire project got put on hold, pending a property survey that was going to cost $650, and that they demanded my friend pay half of, despite him telling them that the fence was definitely on his property, and nothing was going to change with the new fence, and that he was fine with them continuing to have a foot or so of his property, so that he didn't have to rock the boat. Fast forward to the following Monday, when the surveyor comes out. Turns out, the old side fence was not a little on my friend's property, but almost 10 feet onto his property, and the neighbors had built up raised flower beds, and then a nice brick retaining wall right up along the fence line that they had spent a lot of money just in materials for. Never mind the time they put in constructing it. Needless to say, my friend came away with the biggest grin. For the mere price of $325, he was entitled to expand his yard of more than 30 years by about 800 square feet. And Karen and her husband, who happened to be the polar opposite of his wife in personality and was super nice, spent the next week moving their garden, retaining wall, and all of the dirt that was on my friend's property, so that I could build the fence on his side of the actual property line. Then they hired the cheapest contractors they could find to slap up a fence on their side of the property line. They spent almost as much as my friend did on their new fence, as I gave my friend the friends and family discount. 3 years later, the last 20 feet or so of their fence is on the ground already, because it was such a bad job that it fell over in a moderate windstorm this past spring. My friend's fence is still standing, rock solid, and his dogs are definitely making good use of the extra 800 square feet. The third story is called A Disgrace. Our company had a modest sedan that was provided to a coworker and me to use as needed. If we had a task in the field, I always kept it clean, whereas my coworker would leave trash and personal items in it. One fateful day, the regional manager came to visit. The boss took him to our current project using the car. Needless to say, the car was a mess. I hadn't used it in over 2 weeks. Boss got an attitude with me because the car was filthy. I'm an engineer, not a car wash employee. He then put out a memo stating the car was a disgrace and henceforth will be kept clean, and that anything not belonging in the car needed to be thrown away before it was returned. The tone he took was insulting and demeaning. The next time I used the car was a week or so later, after the boss had used it. When I was returning, I noticed a set of keys barely visible between the back and seat. I retrieved it and realized it was my boss's keyring. In the many years that have passed since, I have come to feel it was wrong to toss the keys in the trash. Still, part of me is glad I did it. The next story is called Wouldn't Give Me Hours. So, when I was in my early 20s, I worked at a well-known sandwich franchise. I really liked my job, and I would open and close. I'd also come in whenever anyone called out, because I lived 5 minutes away. One day, my boss hired a new person. No big deal, except my boss kept cutting my hours more and more, and giving them to the new person. I went from working over 30 hours a week to working less than 15, and I was training them. So after a few months of my hours getting cut, but me still coming in whenever called, I put in my 2 weeks. My boss proceeded to not schedule me for a single hour after that. Cue Malicious Compliance. One of my coworkers, who would call in regularly, didn't come in to open the store at 6 AM. I drove by at 11, and it was still dark. My old boss had called me to ask if I could open for her. No, you didn't want to give me any hours after I put in my 2 weeks, so figure it out. I drove by that store for a couple of weeks, and wouldn't you know, it was only open half the time. The last story is called Interrupted Breaks. Our company changed the policy to require that we have a 30-minute unpaid lunch. It was optional before. My department requires that 2 people be on duty at all times, and we often only have 2 scheduled per shift. We ended up sending the labor laws, showing that lunch must be unpaid to HR, and they created an option to change our deducted lunch break to interrupted, thus receiving pay for it. Because of the policy change, the company is now paying all 16 people in my department an extra 2.5 hours of overtime pay weekly for working the same hours. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.